Hey team, my name is Grant, or you may know me as Crimson Knight. I am the writing creator of Always the Same Blue Sky, and more recently Entschuldigung. So I've got a sore throat, please bear with me. I'm a massive visual novel fan. I love the medium, I grew up with visual novels, and yeah, a lot of their stories still stick with me to this day. I was really grateful when I got a chance to work on Always the Same Blue Sky. And it was at that point I sort of assessed my relationship with visual novels and the way they were constructed. I sort of, picked out the elements that appealed to me and the elements that didn't appeal as strongly. I understand that everyone is different. Everyone wants to get something different out of all their experiences. So it was a bit of a gamble, but I feel like I approached it always from quite a different angle. And I'm really grateful that it seemed to resonate so strongly with so many of you. It's literally your support that has allowed me to go on and create Entschuldigung, which again is quite different. It's sort of a niche within a niche. It's a dark psychological horror story with some interactive elements that sort of heighten your involvement in the story. A lot of you asked me how exactly I've done that, so yeah, I thought I'd do a little bit of a let's play, read through the first few scenes so you guys get an idea of the story, the atmosphere, how everything works, and yeah, I really hope you enjoy it. If you do, please grab a copy and leave a review. Your support not only would mean the world to me, but would allow me to go on and work on other visual novels and of course add more features to Entschuldigung, evolve it further. There's still more I'd like to add to it. So yeah, hope you enjoy it, and if you do, let me know. Cheers. The sun had only just set, a faint air of warmth still lingered and provided a thin veil of comfort. I continually circled the perimeter of a dilapidated building, hunting for an entry point as the air slowly cooled, catching up with the time of day. The only door to the property was bolted firmly shut, leaving me with two possibilities: a hole on one side of the building and a smashed window on the other. So you see, over time the strength of the gas lamp diminishes, so to reinvigorate it you have to shake it. So I'll be doing that every so often to make sure you guys can see as much of the scene as possible. Also, I'm aware that the Windows recorder reduces the quality of the images significantly, so please bear that in mind. They probably look washed out and the contrast isn't great, so yeah, they'll look a lot sharper when you play it on your own machine. So yeah, sorry. The hole was going to be a tight fit at best, but the window was too high to reach and I couldn't see a way to climb up. I crouched down by the hole at an angle that let light pass and scoped out the growing room. I weighed up my options. I was fairly confident that I wouldn't be able to squeeze through, but yet I couldn't go home, not without knowing. I'm aware that my stubbornness was totally irrational, that anyone else would have left at this point, but I felt compelled to unlawfully enter my soulless mistress as she taunted me for too long. I sat in the damp dirt and kicked at the edges of the crumbling bricks. They were sturdier than I thought. Frustrated, I decided just to tackle them head on. I knelt down and held my arms in front of me as if about to dive. I slid them into the hole as I lay on my stomach. Comparable to the feeling you get when your head breaks through the icy barrier, I felt alive as I penetrated the darkness. I dislodged dust which made me choke, but it didn't matter. I used my feet to inch myself forward, feeling a little vulnerable as I lay there with my head to the floor, my shoulders blocking the light. I wasn't broad, but the awkwardness of the bricks caused me a bit of trouble. I overcame their defiance through forceful, calculated shimmying. It was a slow process. I felt a little like an animal caught in a trap, but I didn't panic because I was sure that I was making progress, even if it was merely millimetres at a time. My shoulders were still firmly clenched by the abrasive bricks when I heard footsteps. I hadn't expected this. Although the house was hardly hidden away, it was difficult to access. I could feel my feet. I could feel my already pounding chest, now punching the earth. I tried to speed up my entry, but I realised I was making more noise. This panicked me further, and my flailing became increasingly frantic as the footsteps grew louder. Unable to turn around and verify their closeness, I was blind, frenzied, but determined. It felt like a release when the tension left my shoulders, a small rush of endorphins, of comfort. Fortunately, I was slight, meaning that my hips were the only remaining obstacle. I pushed hard with my feet, clenching my teeth as I felt the jagged edge of a brick pierce my leg and scrape downwards. I was in. Panting heavily, I sat to the right of the hole, holding my legs close to my chest. As the noise of the stamping boots grew closer, I tried to stifle my gasps for air. I didn't have to wonder for long if my flailing had left an obvious mark. I watched the shadow of a figure lean down and look through the hole, with nothing more than the very audible noise of my poorly stifled, frenzied breath permeating the complete silence. The shadow lingered next to me. After what felt like minutes, it let out a booming, sinister laugh that penetrated my brittle shell and sent shivers down my spine. I waited for the shadow to leave. It didn't. I sat there in the damp dirt, trying to compose myself, trying to find the strength to continue. I wondered how life had led me to this absurd situation. I recalled how only a few weeks ago I was sat beneath the old oak in a secluded part of the family estate. As a child, I would always hide there where my parents thought it acted like a sanctuary, a place of comfort. I'd gone there intending to write my dissertation, but ended up dozing off after being distracted by the faint caress of thistle seeds, carefully carried by the gentle updrafts from the valley below. I awoke with my body warmed to the perfect temperature by the waning Kentish sun. As I watched Mother Nature preparing the valley below for a change of season, I allowed myself to reacclimatise to reality. I remember sleepily pondering whether my ancestors had sat in the exact same spot, if they'd been at all like me. It was probably the blood I was losing from my leg that caused my mind to slip. I clenched my fists, attempting to refocus my thoughts. Initially, I went to the riverbank to read. The serenity drew me in. I enjoyed the faint sound of water finding its way around the bricks and debris as it made its way downstream. I find silence difficult to deal with, so in a way, the consistency made me feel less alone. Every evening after lectures, I would return to the exact same spot without fail. The reason for this was twofold. Firstly, due to being mentally sound, I recognised that it was healthier for me to spend as little time as possible with my family. Secondly, it was an attempt to claw back a fraction of the routine and familiarity that was snatched from me. I came to the realisation that I'd lost everything during the emigration, when I had my head over the side of the boat, expelling every last morsel of my previous life into the sea. On the surface, it may appear that Berlin isn't too far removed from the cities you're familiar with, but once you're actually living there, you quickly realise that even the things that appear similar are in fact excruciatingly different. Despite my displeasure, I recognised that relocation was unavoidable after what happened, so although I willed it to, my mind struggled to adjust. The move had also served to coax my family's deep-rooted problems to the surface. It's said that people are like onions. If that's true, then my outermost skin is tough with unease. Bear this in mind as you read this shadowed autumn tale, for it is born from a desperation to escape. No, something purer, a longing for security. I was the only one on a riverbank that evening, as the frost had crept in early and the wind had grown especially bitter. On top of this, the ground was damp, but I was far too engrossed in the Edgar Allan Poe anthology I was devouring for the cold to claim any sort of ownership over me. I was blissfully lost in the depths of a world far more interesting until something tore me away. A flicker of light caught the periphery of my vision, which, like a reflex, involuntarily caused me to look up and rejoin the real world. This reactivated my other senses, and I noticed a distant, low-pitched rumbling. Perhaps it was an aeroplane. I'd read a lot about them, but I'd never seen one. As I watched the reflection of the crescent moon and the twinkling stars dueling each other on the inky water, I briefly contemplated the hushed murmurs I'd heard of an incoming war, before returning to the far more intriguing world of the deceased Mademoiselle L'Espanaye. A short while later, my peripheral vision disturbed me again. This time it had a greater impact, and I was suddenly alert, on edge. I stared intently into the derelict house that sat imposingly across the river, trying not to blink. I was succeeding until a dry gust hit me face on. I squinted through the wind, but I saw it, and it was moving. My eyes were wet, so it was hard to be sure, but the blurred, clouded light that I could see through a window appeared to be emanating from a lantern. I involuntarily blinked again as the icy air meshed with the moisture in my eyes. When I reopened them, the light was gone. I rubbed my sleeve over my eyes before walking down to the bank. I squinted as I got closer to the house, trying to study it through the dark. There are a few streetlights behind me. I'd yet to see them lit. I suppose this was due to the area being primarily industrial, and therefore keeping regular hours. I'd seen the incongruous dilapidated house numerous times during the day, and tried to match a picture in my head with the silhouette I was now confronted with. Although I knew nothing had changed, somehow it looked entirely different. I remember asking my English-speaking lecturer about it once. Strange now to think it had previously stuck out to me. I suppose I'd thought it odd, lonely even, situated flush between two busy factories, seemingly free of purpose. She told me that her father had worked in a larger factory, and that as far as she knew, the house had always been empty. Apparently the same man owned both factories, and he desperately wanted to demolish the house in between so that he could join them. Despite being offered ludicrous sums of money, the rich antique collector that owned the house refused to sell. This especially angered the owner of the factory, as he had never once seen the house occupied. I pondered this knowledge as my eyes flitted back and forth. If the building were empty, what had I just seen? As I actually began to absorb the information my eyes were relaying back to me, I realised that everything about the house seemed wrong. A chill tangibly travelled the length of my spine, sapping my resolve. I struggled to swallow as I felt it watching me. I promptly left the bank. On my way home, I decided I would return the following evening to investigate. Huddled in the corner of the foreboding room, caked in mud and bleeding profusely, it now seemed so idiotic. I clenched my fist for a second time, tighter, so that my nails dug deep into my skin. I was angry I'd gotten myself into this ridiculous predicament. Since my arrival, the building had been a parasite, gnawing away at my subconscious. As I watched the menacing shadow wavering slightly, my mistake was clear. I didn't belong there. I should have been at home. This, of course, was no longer an option, with a lingering presence sealing my fate. As I sat there, knees cradled tightly to my chest, wondering what to do. The room was dark, but there was a thin shaft of pale light at the far end of the room, trying to entice me through the door, which was ajar. The light exposed the air for what it was, impure and absolutely corrupted by dust. The particles tried sorrowfully to catch the light, longing to sparkle for just a second, but alas, the muted light was too weak. After spending a few minutes fixated on the sad affair, I inhaled deeply and tensed every muscle in my body, consciously making myself as rigid as I could. Pain screeched through my leg, but I had a plan, and just about enough resolve to see it through. I calculated every aspect of every movement in order to remain unheard as I meticulously edged towards the door. I moved barely an inch at a time as I navigated around the forgotten things that littered the room. Upon reaching the door, I cautiously positioned a knee in front of me and slowly hoisted myself up. I froze as the same booming laugh echoed around the room once more. The shadow disappeared almost instantly, and I remained perfectly still for minutes, waiting for the footsteps to follow suit. They never did. They grew faint at times, but it never lasted long. Stamp, 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 stamp. The imposing persona circled the building rhythmically like a hawk. I was panicking, losing control. I had to get out, but there was nowhere near enough time to grapple with the hold again. That left me with only one choice. I had to find a smashed window and see if there was a way down, or at the very least, I could use it as a lookout. I could wait there until the figure left. Although I knew there was no immediate threat on the other side of the door, I cautiously inched it open. The light caught the blood on my leg, which was starting to congeal. My eyes automatically followed the light to its source, a grand window at the top of the stairs, which was in almost perfect alignment with the imposing moon. The light being as dim as it was, everything apart from the stairs was painted with blackness. Even door frames were only barely visible. The house seemed intent on keeping its secrets hidden, and it was the unknowing it oozed that scared me. I tried to focus on my immediate goal and snapped my head back towards the moon as I started to make my way up the uneven, rickety stairs. I analysed each step to make sure I skipped the ones that looked the least stable. This meant having to wait at times due to the moon repeatedly being blocked by the obtrusive grey clouds. When I reached the ornate window, I wiped the thick layer of dust before attempting to make out the grounds below. An unkept tree consumed the majority of the view, and I could just about see where I had sat the night before. My eyes lingered on the spot as my mind raced, trying to reach some sort of epiphany but failing. I used my finger to trace the frame of the window to see if there was any way to open it, a latch buried under the dust for example, but apart from the dried up spiders, there was nothing. I knew it was pointless putting it off, so I took a deep breath and turned around. The grand window bathed a large portion of the hallway in a sad grey light. I was surprised to see that none of the furniture had been removed, even personal items lingered. There was a grandfather clock, faded pictures of past lives, even a large hanging lamp complete with moth-eaten shade. The decor gave me the impression that the grand house had been occupied by a wealthy family almost a century ago. Although the building was now just a house and no longer a home, I could quite clearly picture what it must have looked like in its prime, devoid of happiness and actively more oppressive. I wondered how the family must have felt, what their day-to-day lives comprised of. Despite it being a different time, a different city, I felt kinship with whomever that grew up there. I absent-mindedly wiped my finger along the top of the cabinet as I walked down the hallway, leaving my mark in the dust. I stopped suddenly when I felt my finger cross a gap in the dust. Was there a second trail? My hand twitched and I pulled it to my chest. I knew that I needed to get out there as soon as possible, but I couldn't help myself. I reached for one of the drawers and pulled lightly on the metal handle. It was locked. I tried the next one down. It was stiff but opened reluctantly. The drawer housed old documents, all written in German. There was a photograph attached to one of them. I angled it towards the light in order to get a better look. It was a picture of a man wearing a smart uniform. The majority of his face had been scratched out. I instinctively looked behind me, and the shadows crept ever so slightly closer. I pushed the drawer shut forcefully and made my way to the room that I suspected contained the broken window. It was missing both the door and its frame, making it feel exposed. Despite not being in the direct path of the moonlight, I squinted as my eyes adjusted. The room was missing both a door and a frame, making it feel exposed, even though it lacked... I could faintly make out it was a child's bedroom, a girl's room if the collection of antique dolls could be considered an indicator. I ignored their eyes as they followed me to the window, and instead focused on listening. Silence. That was a good sign. Even still, I was apprehensive as I poked my head out the window. I waited for minutes, absent-mindedly running my fingers along the ends of the jagged shards that framed my head. I could feel the glassy orbs staring into my back, but it didn't break my gaze. The roaming presence didn't manifest. I felt somewhat confident that it would be safe to leave, but unfortunately the window was much higher than it seemed, and there was nothing I could use to scale the wall. The only option would be to fall from the ledge, but due to the height, there'd be a very real chance of breaking my legs. This didn't stop me contemplating it for a minute, but I eventually faced the fact that I was left with no choice but to tackle the hole for a second time. I clenched my throbbing leg before turning around, again making a conscious effort to ignore my surroundings as I made my way back towards the light. On approaching the door, I heard a clunk from the room opposite. My heart stopped. I had not been mistaken, it was too pronounced. The air left my lungs and I felt the blood pulse around my body as a second tsunami of adrenaline hit me. I instinctively turned away, but as the echoing in my throbbing ear subsided, I knew I couldn't ignore it. Okay guys, so that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Hopefully you have an idea of, the story and the atmosphere of the novel. And yeah, I'm excited to hear what you think of the rest of it. So yeah, thanks again for your support, thanks for watching this Let's Play. And yeah, enjoy the story and let me know what you think.